The world is no longer at war in the physical world, and if you wish to change the world, you change yourself, and so the world changes. It is from the inside out. You don't do it from the outside. You start with yourself as one step in many, many forward steps.
And the stream read for today is going to be a little bit more of a specific energy for some of those people that have been picking up on what's going on here. And this stream read is my own sacrifice of time. And when I say sacrifice, it's not in a traditional sense. It's me taking time out of the day to create and co-create with the energies that are flowing so people can have an understanding of what it takes to respond to energies that are coming to and from you. Our ability to respond to energy determines how we act, how we procreate, how we co-create. All of those things, all of those concepts are here for people to understand. In this process of understanding, we must make choice. And when we make choice, we must sacrifice an old view for a new goal to come true. We must look inside ourselves to understand the retreat inside the self is the ultimate goal. It is to let go of that which holds you back, to open you up to future concepts. So you may nurture these future concepts and be a part of the great co-creating world that we're living in. When we nurture our inner concepts and we nurture our introspective times, we have a whole new layer of energy to function with. This whole new layer that we function with allows us to open up our wisdom, allows us to take the governors of wisdom off, much like a car that is governed to only go so fast. Many people have this same process stuck inside them. What only allows them to go so far until the chain that locks them in place says you can go no further. And that is because people cannot see beyond their own goals. And there are people that create no goals in their life and are simply stuck with a line attached to them so they can go no further. And that's where many people in this world are. They're stuck with a drag line that's preventing them from going further. No matter how hard they try, no matter how hard they push, that chain that locks them in place cannot be overcome until they create new goals, till they let slack or the tension off the chain and go back to the part where they created this anchor point that prevented them from going further. That is known as the process of returning home, going inside yourself, learning about the goals you created in a previous time, and then learning about how to change. Because to let go of the chains of change, the chains of change, a little bit of a play on words there, is to go through that rites of passage, to go through that concept where you say, I accept change in my life, I enforce change in my life, and I will not accept stagnation in my life. The most powerful person in the world is a person armed with the word no and the conviction to say no more and more. So when you say no to yourself, you're saying no to the facts that you cannot succeed. There are so many people out there with the fear of success, and the fear of success will only hold you back. So many people have asked me, how is it I'm able to do this? How is it I'm able to read the stream energy? How is it I'm able to connect with people? It's because I have a system of prayer that affects me, that interacts with me, that makes me aware of the linear timeline me, as well as the multidimensional timeline me. And this is in thought process only. And in thought process, I'm able to share my prayers and inner peace with all the forms of me, all the forms that are trying to influence the future versions, because each and every memory we have is in our awake mind. And we are in the process of trying to put things into our cellular mind. And when we put things into our cellular memory, we understand on a greater level what exactly joy is. When we can let go of those memories that nag us, breaking up with a girlfriend or a boyfriend, divorce, or, the loss of a child, all of those memories are anchors. And the grieving process is by its own term, is what keeps you locked in this grieving state. And to let grieving go is to let it go into cellular memory. And that's where so many people have such a hard time. That's why they can't achieve joy anymore. That's why they can't have that heartfelt smile that exposes them beyond everything, that expands them beyond the will of what's going on. There are people in this world that have been taken by debt or taken by the law system, or taken by another criminal, or another person that's a good person in a criminal's robes. All of those things are very important to understand, because there are people out there that wish to take your free will, to take your wisdom, and to use it for their own, to attach strings to it, so you can no longer have your own inner intent. And your own inner intent is how you get past those of domination and control, past those of ignorance and intolerance. For those people that are trying to get to the next level, you must take time to be aware of your own inner reflection. I said that earlier in the stream read for a specific reason. When one reflects upon themselves, you are reflecting on yourself as a total being. When one looks back to specific points in times, that is not a total being, but in one another sense, it is a total being of another time. And that total being of another time is part of the sum totals of you. And the sum totals of you are trying to always influence what directions you head to in the future. And when you go through the different directions, you must allow yourself to respect your inner sacred space. That inner sacred space that you have is yours and yours alone. When you invite people into that sacred space and they piss on your sacred space, or they leave trash around there, they are no longer respecting your energies. They are no longer respecting what it is that you can do. And you come to a point where you must tell them to leave. And that is where the power of no comes into play. When you say no inside your sacred space, you get those negative entities out, you get those negative people out, and they can no longer have strings attached to your energy. They can no longer trigger you into happiness, anger, or sadness. And even if somebody's triggering you into happiness inside your sacred space, it's still a violation of your free will. Okay? You can still function with a secured sacred space and still be happy. The energy is just filtered through your boundaries, filtered through your outer story, filtered through the expansion that you're going through. So your core being, your core energy is always protected in your own personal self-expression. It's so vital that your personal self-expression is relied upon, because otherwise the burdens of life begin to hold you down. The burdens of life begin to take things away from you. The burdens of life begin to make you rely on other people instead of yourself. And that is one of the most important things that we must begin to learn. We must be self-reliant on many levels. The self-wisdom that we had is so vitally important that we expand and explore.
Well, no, forget about belief, forget about faith. Okay?
How can you do that?
Belief is convincing yourself of something you have yet to know and understand through experience.
Because if you knew it, you wouldn't believe it, you'd know it.
Yeah, in belief, you're placing your life, your attitudes, and your trust in something which has not founded itself in truth within your being, which causes you to be vulnerable. In that state of vulnerability, you can be manipulated, accursed, damned, or can lose your life, all because of belief. You have to know what it is you wish to know. You can simply do that by asking for the understanding and listening to the feelings within you about that.
For example, you have two armies and they're going to go at each other because one is of one religion and one's of another, or one holds a certain belief system and the other another.
What's really going on?
Yeah, or if they got down to the bottom line, which is, isn't it better to make love than war? Why are they doing this? Why are they being manipulated by...
One society is threatening the other with control.
Yeah.
Right.
So they have to establish control. The negotiations break down, and they have no choice.
Right.
I'm going to share with you the science of how this happens. We have to understand what a belief is. We talk about belief. What is a belief? Belief is the marriage. It is a union of thought and emotion. Thought and emotion.
One of the ways that they propagate this propaganda and consensus trance I've talked about a lot is through the word, what I've referred to as talismanic words and terms. And these are well known to politicians and preachers and people who have understood, like Professor Tolkien's character Saruman, the power of the word, the power of speech to control the mind.
Belief is the code that takes that field of energy, possibilities, and translates that field into the reality of this world. Belief is the code that translates possibilities into the reality of this world.
What I want to ask you here, I'm stumbling on your work with Alan Frey, and where you got into this situation where I guess he had written, or did you jointly write the holographic concept of reality?
Alan Frey was at Willow Grove. He was out of Willow Grove. He's working for a different government agency and had made this discovery by accident. It then went across Dr. Carl Schleicher's desk, and Schleicher sent it to me for comment. That's when we suggested, oh, this would be perfect for mind control. And off they went, studying the 0.3 to 3 gigahertz. That's what Alan Frey had discovered, that man had another sensory motor input. Basically, what the microwave band did, and I'm writing about that right now, that what it did was that it caused the temporal lobes to heat up slightly and become more compact, and they began to ring. Once they began to ring, you could take the microwave bandwidth and heterodyne voices onto it, and people could actually hear those voices in their head, just like Son of Sam or something of that nature.
Right.
The powers that were are trying to have been trying to suppress this, both by putting stuff into the food, water, electronically, and otherwise. I mean, look at the cellular telephone system, for instance. 840 to 890 megacycles. That just happens to be the same resonant frequency of the human skull. These people know what they're doing. Plate in the skull. And so you have a 5-fold standing wave pattern of theta lower tachyons, which interact with the liquid crystal structure of the brain matter. And that part of the brain structure that matches the frequency of the vibrating tachyons will respond via harmonic resonance. And the tachyons, which enfold energy, will provide deltons, which in turn create antimatter, not antimatter, but there's a different pre-matter stage of matter, antimatter, ANTE, and matter simultaneously.
Oh, and anti being that little, that means...
Not antimatter, not the opposite.
Right, that little suffix that means precedent.
Right.
Anti, okay,
And
anti.
so electrons are formulated in electric pulse flows, giving rise to a perceived thought. So this can be simulated electronically, okay? So the human brain, in essence, being a biological receiver and a transducer of thought energy,
right,
is a masterpiece of sacred geometry, chemistry, alchemy, and structural engineering. It's constructed in 5 major hard bone plates interconnected by membranes, okay? And the cranium is a superb transducer of linear and nonlinear complex vibrations. And here we're getting into the psychoactive components of electromagnetics. So these complex vibrations can also be called conjugate because they have both three-dimensional and hyperspatial components. So the natural resonant vibrational frequency of the cranium is in a range of 840 to 890 megahertz in non-Hertzian vibration. Unfortunately, an externally applied Hertzian wavefront of the same frequency can and does make the cranium undergo resonance due to entrainment. So they only need 10 to 20% power coherence to do this.
So they pull you off your higher potential and entrain you by setting up like a tuning fork that you're going to start vibrating at this other frequency, so to draw you off.
So partially with the help of alien technology over a period of time, government scientists can now duplicate the nonlinear, random, non-Hertzian wavefronts of thought, the so-called thinking process, and they can shut that down on people even. With the adequate modifications of RF and microwaves, they can induce vibrations in the cranium, access the neural lattice in the brain, and implant thoughts via ELF, ULF. Thus, individuals can be impacted unless they really know themselves on a deep level and
to override that program.
And think it's their own thoughts they're perceiving. Okay, there's a relationship in sacred geometry between the constants pi and phi, with the way that the cranium is constructed. The actual process of transductions of theta waves involves the ionic crystalline structure of the calcium bone in the cranium.
Right, with this crystalline structure, right?
The ionic structure, in effect, forms a phase space which embodies a 12-dimensional tensor field between the electron shells, and the incoming theta waves are held in micro-unified fields within these crystalline structures. Resonance is established and theta waves come down into mass, whereupon electrons are generated. That's why copper has an effect on some of these, because the molecular and atomic structure of copper has a tetrahedral structure, which actually has hyperspatial components. And this is why copper is an effective shield against certain hyperspatial and electromagnetic things. There's some things that you can do, I guess, to deal with it on that level.
On that level, yeah. You can tell us what they are?
Well, again, it's
just briefly.
Again, it has to do with basic, some of the devices that you're talking about. I suppose in terms of consciousness, if a person has a belief structure which supports that, then...
Oh, I see. So you can activate your own, belief structure.
Unknowingly, when the device really has nothing to do with it. It's the fact that you're focusing your consciousness.
Right.
That's the same function that people, when people externalize their higher element out there and call it something else of a higher nature, when in fact it's themselves, and when they address it, when they focus on it, they really don't realize what they're actually doing.
I see.
You see, there's a lot of different things that are going on simultaneously.
And if you're really not aware and you don't understand the whole picture, they're going to get you coming and they're going to get you going.
Indeed. A lot of these effects that they're doing electronically depend on hyperspatial fields. In other words, fields that are 90 degrees rotated from the electromagnetic field. And so in order to overcome this, you have to overcome the the higher order frequency. You have to be resonating at a frequency higher than the higher order frequency that's manifesting itself, hyperspatially as an effect. You have to get higher than the stuff that they're beaming out, as it were, in resonance.
Oh, I see. Affected because you're on a different frequency.
Right, and you're becoming aware of yourself. You're becoming aware, gee, did that thought come into my head? That doesn't belong there, because you know yourself. You're clear. You're at peace inside. And, that's part of it, too. So consciousness itself becomes a defense, you see. So you can look at it on many different levels. It's fairly well explained in the book, but, we're always endeavoring to explain things in various ways to make it well understood.
I have a question as well, Andrew, and this probably puts into perspective some of the things that maybe you've put out there in public and in our chats as well, and in relation to the individual's endocrine system, because the trigger for releasing the adrenochrome in the individual is a fear, and the fear state. So we look at the media and events going on that influence the masses, and we're all sensitive to the other states of each other and stuff like that. So the fear state basically milks the individuals of their life force. And this goes back to sort of the mystery school sort of beginnings of this whole chat, because it goes into the individual self-empowerment and not buying into that fear state. Do you have anything to add on that?
Oh, absolutely. The fear state, when you are functioning in it and you're using the media system, it's running a program on you, so your adrenal glands work absolutely in overtime. So you're filling yourself up. And then there are entities that go through the big cities, as I was describing cities as sacred geometry cities, and they go block by block by block, and they look for something that's like a fruit tree that's ready to be harvested, quite literally. And if you haven't dealt with your ancestral karma, these beings have access to you. That's why ancestral karma is so vitally important, because that's their access point to you. When your endocrine system is overloaded and they haven't harvested you, it's because you're a manifester and you're spreading fear to everyone else. You know, just the slightest little copy and paste or share on a Facebook page, you don't realize that you're feeding that energy, because it's a train. It's like adding another car to the train over and over and over again. In 2012 was all about the fear and creating so much confusion of what's fear and what's real that you couldn't tell the difference. And everyone's endocrine system was working triple time that whole year. And then we got baked by solar flares. Then we had multiple, planetary alignments that twisted our energies in a different way. And this year we've had a lot of silence. And now these people are trying to put out in prediction, the May 17th and June 1st people at the underworld. Bull hockey. We are manifesting beings. Stop being afraid. Stop spreading the fear porn. Look inside yourself. Heal yourself. Look into your karma. Stop investing into those things that promote more cars on the train of fear.
Mm-hmm.
We're manifesting creating species. So our fear means we will create our own destruction.
Mm-hmm.
Like literally. We're at this point where there's not enough people in fear now to create destruction, but there's enough people still in fear to keep us from awakening.
And that's so vital. I remember I was discussing with a friend of ours the other day about staying in absolute sacred neutral, not allowing yourself to go one way or the other, for putting yourself into polarity at these moments as we're endeavoring to find ourselves and really take on the porousness and malleability finally of this reality that we can start to really make manifest now. It was a really interesting conversation, because when it comes to personal, deeply personal things, relationships, trust, and as people go through their own changes, one has to in themselves remain sacred neutral even though they felt hurt by that other being and their actions or non-actions. It's something that came so much into focus already in the beginning of this year. I mean, that's the first thing you said about this whole year to the audience, is staying in sacred neutral. Mm-hmm. And this is great, because when we work with things like remote view, it is key to be at that moment. You're just there as the observer, and in being able to practice these sorts of skill sets affords your soul at that moment to actually be, just for that moment that you're practicing that skill, in that sacred neutral, in that moment of now, in that beingness of all. And that gives yourself a respite just for that moment of the matrix. And some people, when they practice this skill, they find if they've practiced it for many, many, many hours, when they look at themselves in the mirror afterwards, they find that their skin is looking younger. For some reason, the aging process changed. You've noticed that as well. That's one of the great benefits of doing this kind of work that I also wanted to mention at one time point.
Once you learn the nature of connected sovereignty, you connect to a whole new different part of the life force.
Yeah. That
just is continuously feeding you, even though you may still have feeding tubes giving things to other parts of this reality. It's still nurturing that inside co-creative you, who's the inner child, still innocent and still ready to create with the world.
Yeah.
That's in everyone. And just to clear something up, there's so many perspectives to look at this from. My perspective is the sacred neutral. This is information to me. There's no polarity in it. I don't have dogmas or political concepts or things that I'm promoting other than our full, transparent history with no secrets.
Mm-hmm. Right. And you can get the facts.
I'm not channeling. I'm not anything like that. I'm simply in the Akashic record in a sacred, neutral perspective. If I see something that's evil and dark in the Akashic record, it doesn't hurt me, because it's just information.
Right.
If I allow myself to go in polarity and to be affected by it, I can't read the Akashic record anymore.
Right.
It must be a neutral recollection, recalling of it.
Yeah. And then that brings up the idea of us working very diligently on our judgments.
Yes.
Because once we move into judgment, we've moved into polarity consciousness, and we're then in duality. So it's not that ego is bad, it's just that
it's a survival tool.
Right. And we are coming from survival because it's being thrown at us left, right, and center, and every which way, including in our dream time.
Any other questions?
I guess just kind of wonder real quick, what do you always say the event coming up and what's coming up, and you're talking about the spiritual war and the war for everything. Is like, what do you mean when you say the events that are coming up? Just like the end? Is it the end game of like a war or something?
What it is we as a species for the last 26,000 years have been a separated dreamtime society. You've heard of the term unified field theory, that all energies are one. Our dream energies are separated. Our physical bodies and our dream bodies can't interact in the same way that they did 26,000 years ago. Also, we as a species have been separated by technology. There's a technology on this planet that's keeping one side of the world that's facing the dark side and one side facing the light, separate dreamtime societies. So what's going to happen is literally the two sides of the world are going to overcome the technology of separation, and they're going to begin to dream as a unified dreamtime society. That's where people begin to encounter things in their dreams, and then they'll start sharing their dreams, and one person will say, wow, I had this dream, and another person will say, I had the same thing. Somebody will post a video to YouTube describing their dream of pole shift or something else, and 1,000 people will respond to it. Another thing that'll happen, a nurse will go into a hospital room thinking that the patient in there's got 2 broken legs from a car accident the night before, and they'll come in that the patient, has no broken legs. He's healed himself in a dream. People that have been discarded from society will suddenly have spirit walk-ins in their dream time, and they'll become healers. Things like that are going to bring us together, and the forces of domination and control aren't going to be able to keep that out of the news when you're telling the neighbor next door to you over and over and over again around the world. That's really how it's going to play itself out. And to kind of help until you see people in the street in the same scale and size as the 1960s protesting the issues of our world, you're still going to be under the force of domination and control, but no, this is the final 16 seconds of the football game. Both sides still have timeouts, and right now they're reviewing a play.
So does there have to be a massive collapse, like all systems collapse along with a global event? We manifest everything now. When I said we're in a timeout right now and they're reviewing a play, another powerful spirit made a play when Obama went to Israel. Comes back into the concept of world news, and what that of beings that are jumping forward at this time are suddenly finding themselves deleted from the energetic matrix and being replaced by other ascended masters, either in forms of children new to the world or walk-ins to spirits that are giving up living here now. Oh, okay. Well, that's encouraging.
So every time they act, something is taken away from them. So you just got to understand, it's like a child in temper tantrum. That's what they're doing now. You're taking the toys away, and it's going to be a point where the adults in the world are going to stand up and say no, and then people will protest, and as they protest, the government itself will simply walk out on the government because nobody in the government wants to be the target of the anger of the people. They'll start turning state's evidence, and we'll start arresting people and doing the right thing. We already know what's wrong with our world. It's just a matter of us getting the guts and getting out there and marching.
Right.
And the problem was many people do not have what we call inner plane experiences of consciousness, and so they have no idea whether a voice that's inside their head is coming from them or from something outside themselves. And so, of course, the first mode of defense is to simply say, like the Hopi Indian, man has a responsibility for the thoughts he chooses to entertain. In other words, whether that thought came from you or that thought came from somewhere else, why are you choosing to hold it in your mind's eye?
Absolutely.
Well, here it is.
Now,
read it in the way. That's the plea. And so you started training SEALs and special forces with these concepts so that they could use their belief systems as a tool rather than a driver. if you were a staunch Christian and two aliens walked in the door, the big question is, would you be able to see them? And now, with all of that said, belief systems are important to all of us, and, assumed truths. They're arbitrary, it turns out, and most people don't even know where they came from. They just assume they're correct. Jesus said it, I believe it, and that's that. But, with that said, I have a pair of bell-bottom pants I'm never going to fit in again. But I still keep them, like a belief system, as a reminder. They may not be appropriate for what I'm trying to do. And so you fold them up nice and neat, and you put them in the drawer to pull out later because they're familiar and comfortable with you, like old clothing is. And that's basically what I did. One of the power tools was to train SEALs how to change their belief systems like they would a pair of clothing. Now, in order to do that, you have to be able to witness your behavior. That's a different altered state, and why all the saints have throughout history told the public the importance of meditation and training the mind. That's basically, it's like an unruly little child. It runs all over the place. And, of course, the thoughts you choose to entertain are what happens. And so if you have a doubt, there it is. Merlin put it very succinctly when he said, anything not specifically forbidden is mandatory. That was in a little book by T.H. White. And that concept applies. Whatever is possible, you can count on it. So what you're trying to do is move through the course without ricocheting off walls or creating karma. You're trying to slide through things smoothly. How do you do that? It's called flowing. There is a technique that you can do that will allow you to touch some part of your inner being that has more knowledge than your conscious state does.
Okay, everybody wants to know what's disinformation, what's true, what's not true, and what people believe. Don't believe anything. Beliefs have nothing to do with experience. If you experience something, then you know it. There's a big difference there. If you believe believe something, you can be manipulated.
But I guess you have the experience, and then you're going to need to interpret it somehow. You're going to need to make reference to it. You're going to need to understand it.
And that's part of the deal, because when you're trying to interpret the experience, what do you interpret it with? You interpret it with previous experience. And that previous experience is loaded with predispositions, beliefs, conflicting beliefs,
baggage.
A whole bunch of baggage.
Mm-hmm.
And things out there, and this might seem kind of a strange way of saying it, things out there have absolutely no meaning except the meaning that you give it. So, two people could look at something. One says it's good, one says it's ugly, one says it's Republican, one says it's Democrat. But it isn't any of that. It simply is. And the meaning you project out on it, you have to understand how consciousness works. And if people really understood who they were, they wouldn't do what they do to each other.
Are we simply observers, passive observers in this universe, watching the world go by, or are we powerful creators? As our most cherished religious and spiritual traditions have always said, are we actually powerful creators that have forgotten how to use our power?
I consider myself a healer, and I've been trying to figure this out for a couple of years now, going through a lot of experiences. And I guess I would like to know if I'm on the right path and if I have any blockages, because I can heal, like I've been healing friends and family, and but I still feel like I don't quite have a grasp on the whole picture, like to go and put myself out there and say, yeah, I'm a healer.
Okay. Well, what you want me to do is do a reading, and that's fine. What I need you to do for a reading is tell me about your first 10 minutes of the day, be as descriptive as possible about right when you woke up, and do that for about 45, 50 seconds out loud, and then I can tune into your actual energies of the infinite you going into the finite you.
Okay. All right. I woke up, and I did remember a dream, which I hardly ever remember my dream. And I was with this person that I know, and I just recently saw him, and he was in the dream, and he was trying to tell me something, but he didn't quite know how to tell me, so he never told me, and then I was filling out these forms in the dream. And then I woke up and I got out.
I've tuned into your energies.
Okay.
All right. The first energy that's coming to you is called the sharing and quickening. And what's going on in your dream world, there's a dancer with 2 rattles and a big headdress that's going round and round in a circle. And it's a hybrid mix of a Sufi dancer and a native Aztec dancer. And it's really odd to see that, actually. When I see 2 concepts like this mixed in a single concept, right away it says that you've bonded those 2 past lifetimes, this lifetime, so you can understand that dance is the method for you to find your self-expression of spirit, because in dance there is also prayer. And what's going on in your dancing dream time, you're going through the sharing and quickening of the 2 different sides of the worlds that are functioning through your dream time. And one of these things that are coming to you during this dancing dream, quite literally, is the talking stick. So you are dancing and speaking, dancing and talking to the universe, and understanding that the innocent and inner child within you is the one that's flowing with the feet of the dance, and the person that's interacting and co-creating with the energy of the dance. This is a dreamtime dance that is expanding you to a new layer of truth. And the layer of truth that the awake you is looking for is the understanding of are you on your path? But in reality, you've been on your path since you were a young child, and what you must give away is the adult misconception of the inner child that's you. And this is a process you'll have to do in a ceremonial concept where you are giving away the adult you for a short period of time and allowing the innocent inner child you to blend with the healer, so you may understand that the co-creative and procreative forces of the great mystery are functioning with you so you can create healer goals. Right away, I'm tuned into your energy of your body, and your gut is out of line. When your spirit body goes into the dream world, it actually lives inside the gut. The Chinese call this your Dan Chen, or your hara, the center of your energy, which is above and below your navel. And the intestinal tract is actually houses your dreaming body. And right now there's a significant amount of leftover toxic psychic energy that's attaching to your intestinal walls. And this is actually what's preventing you from being able to access the dream world fully. And this is the secondary reason why your dream world's in this whirling, spinning, dancing motion. It's trying to get you to flush out your internal system and to understand that this negative toxic psychic energy came from when you were a kid, when the inner child you began misunderstanding the way the world was functioning. Were you in a situation where your siblings or your parents constantly argued around you?
I don't know that they constantly argued, but I was in an unusual upbringing from the time I was born, because my parents were having an affair, and I had 2 fathers, and was told, you know.
You had a dysfunctional family. Many people have that, and you as a child, and the psychic that was you, began absorbing that energy like a sponge, and that's actually what you're letting go of. And you can only do it from the inner child, because that's the child that is projecting upon the adult you. And this is actually like a big weight that's around your shoulders. And one of the ways that you're going to get rid of it is, once again, to dance in the physical world, and understand that the ritual and ceremonial dance you're giving is allowing the inner child out into the rhythm of your feet. And in these rhythms and pulses and beats of the dances, where you'll begin to understand that the great mystery is contacting you so that you can experience more of the magic of life through synchronicity. By choosing to dance and to give away the adult self for a little while, you open yourself to a whole new layer of introspection about your life, about how some of the foundational things in your life have led you into being a healer, but also how some of the foundational stuff in your life have led you away from fully functioning as a healer.
Hi, I was calling for...
Hi, yes. Hold on one second, Rosalind. I have another call, right, 519. Can you mute your mic?
I'm on the telephone.
Yeah, you have to just keep quiet a second. I have another caller on. I'll get to you in just a couple minutes, all right?
Sure, yep.
So what's going on here for you, Rosalind, is quite literally you need to clear out your gut. When's the last time you fasted?
I haven't, but I thought I was balancing my energies, but lately I have, like, right now I have, like, all this energy in my breast area, and I know I woke up and it said I had some toxic poison, energetic poison in me. I didn't quite know how to get rid of it, because obviously... As a healer, you must constantly take care of your own body and be aware of the messages that your body is telling you. Because there are many, many, many healers that just keep giving and giving and giving until finally they're giving away their core energy to heal other people.
And you can't function as a healer like that and heal large groups of people. And in the situation you're in, you have to balance your physical time so that there's a healing part for you where you're using the same healing skills on yourself and also using the same wisdom that you impart to others on yourself. And this is a time where you go inside and you look at your habit patterns of being the healer and the types of energies that are coming through you. There's a tremendous amount of galactic energy that's flowing through you right now. And this is something you have to take into your heart and understand that it's there for a reason. It's there for you to look inside yourself, because the future you, the one who's totally in union with her inner child and has become the physical dancer and the dreamtime dancer, you'll begin to understand that you've been walking between two worlds for a long time, but the only thing that's been holding you back is this negative, toxic psychic information that's inside your intestines right now.
And I don't know how to get rid of it. I thought I had dealt with
an enema or colonic is the first way to start. And by doing that, you'll notice that quite literally the stuff that comes out will be covered in mold. Will have candida on it. And you'll discover that the habit patterns of eating you had as a child, you absorbed the psychic information of your parents whenever your mother or father made you a meal. It had psychic data in it, and you would decipher that data and hold it within your gut because you were constantly being overwhelmed psychically from college to high school to junior high, middle grade school, all of it. In this, you're literally psychically holding on to food particles that represent a date and time in which you ate around other people.
Well, I am hypersensitive to foods, and I don't eat anything that has chemical toxins, or, I mean, it has to be organic, otherwise my body completely reacts.
Right. So you should do a ritual fast, or start with a colonic or an enema, and look at what comes out, and really identify that what's coming out is everything is attached to negative psychic information that you've been holding on to for a very long time. And this is a common happenstance amongst many empathic children, that they become so overwhelmed with the empathic data that they physically have nowhere else to store it but in the food that they bring in to their stomachs. Mm-hmm. And that's what brings on a lot of toxicity to other types of food, because some food can be a healing food.
Mm-hmm. The other thing is that, I feel like I connect with my higher self and, infinite intelligence, and I hear the words, and I have feelings, and I have knowings. And some of the things I hear that, like I have attachments, or I have some type of technology in me, or I have an opening to my meridian system, and I don't know how these openings keep happening, where other energies can come in.
The other energies are coming in because you haven't solidified your free will and identified your sacred space. This is a concept that I've talked about on many shows. Your sacred space is your inner core being, and at times we let other members of our family into our inner core being and share energy with them, and that's the way soul families are supposed to function. But in this modern world, other people get in because they're partially psychic enough to project themselves inside you, and that's a violation of your free will. And oftentimes these become energy vampires or energy leeches. And right now, the type of healing you've been doing, you've exposed yourself to the psychic parasites of other people. And they begin to eat away at the boundary layers that you've created as an adult. And it calls for a time where you reinforce these boundary layers and expand them so negative psychic parasites or people, quite literally people, don't have free access to walk in and throw trash around in your sacred space.
Okay, so how do I stop that when I do healings?
It starts with you empowering yourself with prayers externally to your own aura. It's not about an external source of intelligence, it's about your own energy, where you talk to your own energy field and say, I'm empowering my sacred space to not have anybody come in and walk in unless they are absolutely invited into here.
Okay.
Okay. I've got two other callers on the line. The best advice I can tell you is you need to stand up and empower your sacred space and do external prayers directly to your own energy field. And you need to make sure that you do a fast or a colonic or an enema and be very attentive to what's coming out of you, because once you do it, you're going to release a massive amounts of toxic psychic data, and you're going to feel a void in your life, quite literally, and don't be surprised if other negative times in your life come up to fill that space, and that's your opportunity to connect to the light, wisdom, and healer that you have and literally refill your internal intestines with the light energy of healing.
John Lilly once put it this way: there are no limits at all to the human mind whatsoever, except those we impose on ourselves because of our beliefs. And those limits are also beliefs to be transcended. And that's a view that suggests that the possibilities of human transformation are virtually infinite. That we have no way of knowing the outer horizon of what it means to be human.
So why did I need to spend the time with these people? The reason they came out of the mountains in the 1960s was because they had counted off 25 generations. Because they believed that their mission was to stay hidden from the world for 25 generations. And on the birth of the 26th generation, they came down to the lower world to share their insights. Their insight primarily is that the world is about to go through enormous changes. But we have a role to play. And they want to make sure that everybody, as much as possible, understands that we have to participate in this process. Because they said, you know, even though they didn't know any of this because they've been tucked away for 25 generations, they said the way that humanity is living on the earth today is not sustainable. I think we'd all agree with that. So something has to change, but we have to participate in that process. So they made the observation, they said, first of all, we have to literally participate as though the existing paradigm was going to continue. And the only way in which we can bring about change is literally getting physically involved and doing as much as we possibly can in whatever way we can to help bring about those changes. But they said that of itself is not enough. Because the other thing that we have to do is we have to visualize. We have to visualize. They're very definite here. This is not meditate, it's visualize. It's literally create the quiet space and visualize the type of future that you would like to see. And it doesn't have to be the same vision all the time. You could just be visualizing something for yourself, something for your family, something for your community, for your country, for the world, for the universe, whatever. A different visualization. But they say it's very important that we don't get an existential attachment to a particular visualization. Because if we did so, we might actually limit the outcome. Because, you know, we are limited in terms of our perception in this limited realm. So having too much of an attachment may actually limit the ultimate opportunity. And what they make the observation is that if we do both, if we make the time to sit down and visualize the type of change that we'd like to see, not the way in which it's going to come about, just the visualization of the ultimate goal, as far as we can possibly take it, what we will find is that things happen in our physical, empirical, material lives which actually help us to bring about those changes. And they said that this would actually be accelerated. Now it was June 2010 when I was with them, and they said that this process would absolutely accelerate exponentially with effect from November 2011. And they said, but Ian, it doesn't mean to say you can't start. You could practice. And they said, if you practice, what you will find is that from November 2011, things speed up.
Well, I'll tell you, maybe we should draw another diagram. Physical bodies are here, another physical body, and this is Joe, and this is Jim, and this is Sarah, etc. Now, clearly, on the this is the physical level, yeah? Now, on this physical level, we are separate. You sit there, and I sit here, and we're all separate. Now, let's draw another level. This level is slightly higher, and let's call this the level of the soul, yeah? Well, there will be some mingling here. Let's draw this person as extending to practically infinity this way. Now, look what happens. At the physical level, we're separate. And there's this much distance between us. Let's say that on the soul level, this person extends this much, and the other person gets slightly mixed in with him. That is, the souls are in a way in touch with each other. Okay, they overlap, these two lines. Now let's go now to a higher level, and let's call this, say, the level of the higher self, which is kind of a boss of that soul. There, what we find is that this fellow's higher self extends this much, and the other fellow's extends this much. There is more overlap between them.
Right.
On the very highest level, which is the high spiritual level, we are basically overlapping completely. Everybody is overlapping everybody else. In other words, everything and everyone is everywhere. In other words, we've become omnipresent. This is a state of highly spiritual perfected beings, or gods, you may call them. Okay?
Okay, and so that we exist on all of those simultaneously.
On all of those simultaneously,
So then,
but we're not aware of that.
In your view, then, if when we see each other as separate entities, that's only seen on one plane of reality.
Correct. And so whether we like it or not, we're all evolving towards godhood. But, you know, it takes eons, so don't hold your breath.
Is that the purpose of evolution?
Naturally. Because at that point, you start understanding how the system works. And one of the good things about this system is that the system wants to teach you about itself.
What does
It's
it
a
want
good
to teach you?
system.
Yeah? What does it want to teach you?
Well, if you are omnipresent and you're all-knowing, that is the state which the system wants you to be in. Because the system is an intelligence or information gathering system. And it's also freely distributing that information.
In your view,
Yeah.
we all started off somewhere a long time ago in which there was sort of undifferentiated matter, which slowly, millions and millions and millions of eons, evolved until a very complex organism that we now call a human being. And it has a nervous system which we at this particular point in time understand as being sensitive to certain levels of reality through our eyes, our ears, our nose, other sensory perception. And that's sort of what we call material, ordinary reality that enables us to drive cars and do our work every day. However, there is an evolutionary movement that will continue to push us beyond where we are today. And the thing which is going to be pushed is our soul, and that at some point we will have these experiences of elevated consciousness in which higher realities are not only seen but lived, and ultimately we come into perfection.
Whether we like it or not.
Yeah? Can we speed that up by doing it?
Yeah. Well, you use the meditative techniques which push the nervous system a lot faster than the normal evolutionary rate. Those techniques are available, but you don't need to do anything. It's going to happen anyway.
It's going to happen. What a view. It's a very big, bright view.
I'm really looking forward to what's coming out of this coming shift of perspective.
Oh, let me promise you that anything you could possibly imagine, multiply it by 1 billion, and then you've got how amazing what's coming is.
Wow.
That is a thought. That is a thought experiment that I will do with absolute pleasure.
It's a smorgasbord of unlimited menu service.
The
ironic part of it, there are going to be beings that are going to come outside of time and from other universes and are going to quite literally ask for immigration status onto our world. And we as unity consciousness will have to rapidly resolve our differences, which is what we are doing now in time, as we transition to no-time entities who then transitioned into universal time entities. As I stated many times before on the show, we need to return to universal time, and that is an expression of the total potential of sentience. Each time the universe expands, it's because sentience immigrates from another part of the universe and expands the total potential. You have a solar system that is revolving around a galactic central sun. That solar system is representation of the total sine wave of potential sentient energy in perfect expression at any moment that it's going around the galactic central sun. That that solar system will go into a very dense part of space in the grooves of the record, and sentience is compacted into a very dense where it has very limited expression. And then the solar system will move into the very light part of space where sentience is very easily expanded. We are going from a dense part to an open spot. Half of our solar system is in the open spot, other half is in the dense spot. And our particular solar system, our sun, is split right now in decision-making choices of what to allow the next immigration in, because each immigration of each day, every time somebody dies, another baby is reborn to replace that sentient expression. Each planet has its own expression of time, which is the potential of sentience that is represented in its daily revolution around its sun. We are in this agreement of time, which is a social agreement, which does not follow universal law. So we must go from non-universal law of time expression into no time, heal our expressions, and then move into galactic time. And this is what the expression of awakening is.
I completely love it. It's so incredibly important. Something that you said there was so important. If you would like to understand this time that you are living in, that is what you have to think about. This is the time of rapid resolution of your differences. And that can take many different forms. So it's hard for many of us, even in the people listening, there's a great many people who are listening right now that are struggling with the fact that we are basically at war on this planet right now. But we have to understand that if you look from a universal perspective, not just a limited human perspective, that some of the most rapid resolutions of our differences were in fact war. And so the peace and the unity and the harmony that is coming from this conflict which you're watching in the world right now is part of the necessary conditions that is going to cause this resolution of our differences and thus line us up with this reality which we want to experience so badly, this utopia we've all been speaking of.
Yeah, the simple expression, I'm retranslating in my head as you speak, Teal. In other words, if a shooting match either begins or looks like beginning in Syria, it's actually a part of us resolving these differences and changing our perspective to do it another way.
Yes,
but without that stimulation, would we make that choice? Maybe not.
Exactly. That is the perfect way to put it. And so if you look at the human organism and you look at healing within the human organism, you could look at a sickness and say that it is negative, but what it actually is a healing crisis, a crisis causing healing. And so what we're watching in the collective consciousness of humankind is a crisis which is causing us to come into alignment with healing. It is a healing crisis we are watching in Syria.
Yes.
And something I'd like to add to Syria, in many of my shows, I describe that Earth has well over 200 womb chakras, WOMB. And the system right now that we operate must dominate and control those womb chakras, because that is where DNA, conscience, and sentience is created. Yes. Because Earth is meant to be a seventh-dimensional galactic seed planet. It is meant to multifunctional in many galaxies, to literally have the sentience that live among those womb chakras to create DNA patterns that are to be psychically transmitted to blank Akashic records planets, so that they have a massive encyclopedia of new DNA, so that souls can incarnate and have an experience. When you change Earth and give it the system that it has now as part of the remedy and resolve of the great karmic pollution that we've talked about, those womb chakras are the key, and that's why the wars are above them, because that means you must resolve that DNA wisdom that needs war to resolve objects or sentience.
Exactly. That was exactly awesome. Perfect way of putting it.
So everything is as it should be. Right.
Andrew, earlier in this show, when we were having these different types of interference, and we were talking about dreams, and you had mentioned the date 2014, the end of 2014. What is that? What can we expect at that time, or what were you referring to?
That is the last date of choice for those extra-dimensional beings before they're being forced deported from this universe.
Okay.
Another way of putting that is 2014 right now is the potential, which is a probability we are currently lining up with, where the frequency of Earth will raise to such a degree that those beings who have not made that choice can no longer be a match to this time-space reality.
And what happens to them then?
They become a match to somewhere else.
Does that mean they die? Or that's not even, they're other entities. Anyway, they just...
Annihilation is not a possibility. So what it is that they'll become a match to a time-space reality which is a match to their current vibration, but it will no longer be a match to this one.
And then what's the implication for us on the right here on this planet that exists when they no longer are a match and they're not here? That's that beautiful possibility. That's that smorgasbord. Yes?
Well, each human who lines up with that will have to have already previously become a match to that type of experience. It's not like it can be created for you, which is really why we're in this business. All of us are in this business in order to help people to vibrationally align with that kind of reality so that they can make that vibrational jump when it happens.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it's sort of like, which story do you want to tell? Because it's two sides of the same coin. On one side of this coin, we have this utopia, this harmony, we have this golden age. On the other side of this coin, we have the fact that any time there is that big of a vibrational leap within mankind, there is also the opposite, which is that if you don't make that leap, if you're not a match to that vibration, you can no longer be a match to this time-space reality. And so you watch giant genocide rates, you watch giant wars, you watch things that eradicate whole sections of population, often because many people on this earth, by virtue of what they're focusing on, by virtue of the vibration they hold, they are not a match to that vibrational jump which is being made universally, being made by the world itself, and being made by the consciousness of humankind.
Simple case of non-presence in the end. I sort of perceive of the higher dimensional beings as applying a dampening field to our consciousness, and that, you know, upon their departure there will be a uptick, a kick up of consciousness as a result simply of their absence.
Yes, but you have to become a match first to their absence, you see. So it's not their absence that's going to do it. It's the fact that you are going to line up in such a way that you will be a match to them leaving. So the beings that are still focused on oppression, or the beings that are still focused on their own lack of freedom, will have to remain a match to lack of freedom. So regardless of whether those beings leave or not, even those beings will have to be a match to more oppression by virtue of their attention. The only beings who will be able to align with perceiving these higher beings leaving are the ones that are already a match to that perceived new freedom.
But given that you know, vibrations always, you know, two things vibrating in different ways will always, if they're in physical proximity, will always move to they'll always resolve their vibratory differences. Will not the sheer presence of those, you know, large numbers of those people working at matching that higher pattern draw the others up to them? If there's enough numbers.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Tuning forks.
I think there's a paradox there in a sense, because if we totally sort of bow to the will of God, it might lead us to not want to resist the current situation.
It's an incredibly interesting risk. And you've got to trust that when you have surrendered, you will hear so clearly. The Tao says the truth waits for eyes unclouded by longing. And your longing to have it different than it is ultimately a trap, because it keeps you from hearing the whole gestalt, the whole way things are. And as you hear the totality of it, you trust that out of that will come an appropriate action, a dharmic action. And that's the trust of Dharma. That's the trust in the wisdom of the universe that is greater than your own personal ego wisdom.
So what we have living inside our world, controlling us, are the universal apex predators, living on the most spiritually fortified planet in all 17 universes. This doesn't end easy. That's why it took so long to get here. You didn't have one. You had the top 15 apex predators of the universe who decided to work together to force light and dark to fight each other at the most highest zealot level, while light and dark didn't even know it was being used by these apex predators.
Didn't even know. That's
Didn't
incredible.
even know. And it took them millions of years to figure it out. And once they did, it came down to who was the most capable of projecting to the ancient future at a point where it wasn't even malleable in the ancient past. And those that figured out how to create the ancient future and reverse engineer it till we can get to now. at the same time while the multidimensional beings were engineering a whole new universal future that didn't include that ancient future of unity. Because they were controlling at our belief systems, all dimensions and time streams of us living here. And then we'll learn even more that these multidimensional beings aren't just on this world, they're on hundreds of worlds. And there are other worlds still going through their own process of domination and control. But when these 15 apex predators are removed from the universal game, those numbers 16 through 100, they're not going to be apex predators anymore. They won't even be in this universe anymore. They will have a whole new universe for them to go and be apex predators amongst each other.
So all the apex predators will kind of get in put in their own little
universe.
Little.
An 18th universe will be created for them.
Oh.
So they no longer entangle with us.
When's this?
Creational events.
When is this happening?
2011 to 2014 is when all of the contract holders at that moment in history are the contract holders for all universal karma. And universal karma is coming to a zero balance. Whoever is the contract holder, which are these 15 multidimensional beings who are the upper echelon and crust of our world, they will be holding the hot potato of karma, and it's not judgment that will come, it is remedy and resolve that will come as we no longer agree to time, because the compression field in the astral world is limiting the Archon's ability to force reincarnate people and to use their false light technology. There has been a tremendous blockade on the astral worlds to prevent beings from immigrating to our astral worlds and creating ancient futures with us before they've lived on this world. You know, we're going to learn that this quarantine field affects whole layers we haven't even begun to perceive yet. And that's what allows now the time of nothing happening, so nothing happens, and then those left holding the bag during nothing happening are the ones that karma is going to come calling to for the final balancing of the books. Those will be the truth tellers, the disclosers.
Some people in the chat were bringing up, and I think so too, have you ever watched Star Trek: The Next Generation?
Oh yeah.
I'm not sure. Yeah. Some people are saying it's like Q. They're bringing up Q, the guy that pops in, and for those who haven't watched it, like he's like this all powerful being, and he just kind of pops up to mess around with the crew and the captain, and he's all powerful, can do anything he wants, but he's basically just a giant dick.
And there's not one. Yeah, he's a giant dick, but there's not one Q. There are other Qs, and they meet in a restaurant at the end of the universe. Believe it or not, these multidimensional beings have a restaurant at the end of the universe. That's where they planned all this shit out. I'm serious. They planned all this out a long time ago. When war was introduced to this universe, they sat back and go, we're the apex predators. And they just introduced war. You know, are they challenging us to do something? No, we're going to go hang out at the end of the universe and use remote viewing skills to figure out what this new war thing is and how much fun we really can have. And then they realized it's a game that the universal creators, and like, no, we're not playing your game. We're creating our own game. And we're going to use your war game to invest into your other people like you wanted to. But we're going to make zealots that are so crazy that they're going to make uncreational events by whispers from us. That's what they challenged the universe and did. You're not giving me a little play toy called war. Screw that. I want you, Mr. Universe. I want to be you. Then that makes me the true apex predator. I've killed a universe.
Oh, that is cool. You know, a question that popped up from that too, though, and I just have to ask because you mentioned the restaurant at the end of the universe. So who owns that restaurant?
McDonald's.
Who's running it?
It's a drive-through.
Julie is laughing at this too. She and I had the same question pop up in our mind. That was good.
That or a Denny's. That or a Denny's.
Yeah, there you go. Open up all times a day.
All times in the universe. Open universally.
One of the other reasons why, one of the other symptoms of why this bestial, evilarchy could be dying off is simply that evil itself, I've said this in a work, is itself unsustainable.
Yeah.
And therefore that regardless of the kind of, as I said, gung-ho, obsessive nature of these evilarchs, they're evil, they're mad, they're pathological. And so nature, which is in perfect order, does not support their agenda. And that means that any kind of evil outfit, especially the one of the global level we're talking about, it literally requires such incredible mental and physical resources, it's actually quite staggering. And this is why I say that once upon a time you may have had that kind of control, and you may have had those resources at your fingertips, like in the pre-industrial age or whatever. But as time goes by, you simply don't. There's other little poxy conspiracies that crop up to rival you. There's all sorts of internal dynastic rivalries. There's death, in which the main ideologists, who are always few, die off, and then their descendants prove incompetent. We've seen this in business, we've seen this in local politics, and we certainly can see it in science, and we see it in all areas of life, and we certainly can imagine it happening on this higher level. And as I said, these higher forces don't like us. They don't even like our planet. I spoke about this in the Atlantis book. It's a big downer being insane, you see.
Yeah.
The inherent order of the universe, the inherent order of our planet, and the order of the human soul is actually obnoxious to these people. So they're the ones who really got their backs against the wall. Now they compensate for this by a different kind of order, a malignant order, a draconian order. So they're one of their symbols is the beehive. Another one of their symbols, as we all know, is the hierarchical pyramid. But never imagine for a moment that order that they're into is anything natural or organic. It's not. It's a very pathological, draconian order that they impose, and they impose it like a sort of exoskeleton of control, because inwardly these people are mush psychologically. They're in deep psychosis and neurosis. And so the universe is not, and the human soul is not. It's in a state of order. And therefore that order is obnoxious to these people, and that is another reason one can chart up on the board as to why the old monolithic thing is not working. So what we're doing now is we're in a very pliable time. Astrologically, don't want to bore people with all the astrological jargon, but Pluto is in the sign of Capricorn. This tells people who know about astrology backs up what I'm talking about, that amazing upheavals from deep down, can cause seismic reactions that disturb the establishment, the status quo. So there's certain cosmic things helping us, But again, it all matters that we need to tear up the contract as well. We need to also do our part to sign off from this, and then enter into a different relationship with fear. Like you said earlier, they keep us in fear. Yeah, but what is fear? And why do you have it? And, all of that. So there's a very interesting psychological component to this.
In a karmic perspective, the Cabal, the Illuminati, whatever you want to call them, they're contracted to do that on a higher level. And yes, there are some people that are abusing the rules, broken rules, which are coming to a head now. But again, this is a perfect system that's been planned out. But you still have free will to operate in the perfect system, and that's called synchronicity. We can stop synchronicity, and when we limit synchronicity, we limit our abilities. And there are people that totally function on synchronicity and miracles, whatever you want to call them. Living in the moment, how you function.
Well, remember, it's very, very empowering for a person to project an external nemesis and then go out and with muscular skill, not psychological skill, but some sort of political, action, it feels very good, erotically, sensationally, sensually, to win in those kinds of battles. It just has a particular, sensational appeal. Just like any sport does, or mastering...
Another thrill, basically.
Another thrill. Yeah. It's a thrill. It's a very, very powerful thrill. Yeah. And man is always looking for that thrill. Don't you see that if we really step back from the canvas, what would be if we have what would it be if we have created all of these monsters? and we've created the fight itself. And then we create the armor and the sword to go and do the fighting. You see, what happens if we're caught in that loop?
Yeah.
Where we manufacture the problem, and the Course in Miracles has gone into this. If anyone's familiar with that book, The Course in Miracles, The Course in Miracles will always say that why do you manifest a problem when there isn't one?
Yeah.
You know, I'm paraphrasing, but
yeah.
the gist of this is, don't look at the external problem. Look at why you imagine there is a problem. Look at why you're motivated. Look at how you're motivated, you see. Look at how you now, your energy is going towards a fix-it, you know, in this very active masculine kind of way. But it's a different kind of mentality to ask, where did the problem come from? And why am I reacting in panic or whatever?
Yeah.
Sophocles put the entire problem this way. He's a great Greek playwright and deep thinker, and he said that, look, nothing vast enters the life of mortals without a curse. Talking about that suffering again. Somehow, as our tragedy, our pain, our sorrow leads us back to the shrine. I wish it wasn't that way, but it is. Therefore, the only thing to do then is to come into a different relationship with that force of tragedy.
What I'd like you to do is give people a few pointers on what those sort of not just adaptive skills are, but evolutionary skills. And within that, what I'd like you to do also is, and you did this on my radio show, and I think a lot of people found a lot of value in it, but talk to people also about how to protect themselves on a spiritual basis. Because I think a lot of people feel that they're under attack, whether it be from various mind control devices, etc., but also from beings, discarnate beings, etc. And so some of the basic tools that you would give them.
Okay, well, I guess what I would talk about first is it go back to shadow. And if you think about your ego, every human being has an ego. And what you think of as you, so what I think of as Doc, or what you think of as Carrie, right? That's our personality, that's our persona, right? That's our sort of frontal self. And we tend to identify with that, but we're way more than that. So that's this little tiny portion of the iceberg, just like, you know, less than 5%. And the portion of that we are, that we don't like to admit that we are, that's what is often referred to as our shadow. And by the way, that can be both good parts about ourselves, which Carl Jung referred to as the gold in the shadow. That's your potential. But also parts about yourself that maybe are not so pretty, not so nice, not so good, right? If you and I go have lunch together, and you want me to meet a friend of yours, and that friend of yours is like, say, you know, really anal retentive, and you're not anal retentive, and I am, but I don't think about myself. I like to think about myself as really laid back, and I'm an easygoing guy, but everybody except for me knows I'm completely anal retentive. And, you know, if we go have lunch and your friend is anal retentive, behaves that way at lunch, it'll drive me crazy. I'll get really upset. I mean, you know, we'll finish lunch and we'll be driving home, and you'll go, well, Doc, so what'd you think of my friend? And I'll be like, oh my God, how can you stand that person? They're so anal, right? And you'll be like, because you're not anal, it won't really bother you all that much. You'll just be like, yeah, well, you know, he's a little bit uptight, but, you know, I've known him for 10 years. He's a nice guy. He's got a good heart, and that's just sort of like his thing. Now, and I'll be like, I don't know how you could take him. It drove me insane. I don't like that guy. Well, what's really going on? What's really going on is that's my shadow being mirrored back to me. Is that I actually, as a person, I'm, you know, what's actually going on is I'm anal retentive, but I don't think about myself that way. So what I do is I actually filter out that part of myself. I don't perceive it. It's on the other side of my self boundary. So what a lot of people probably would really help is for them to wake up to the things that you don't like about other people. You're probably going to find is on some level a part of you in your shadow.
Well, you know what judgment is. Do you understand what the idea of judgment is?
For me, it means prejudice or prejudgment.
Well, you know, it's really choosing what you prefer. You choose what you prefer and let everyone else have the right to live the way they want to, knowing that the way they live has nothing to do with the way you choose to live. It will not affect you if it is not what you prefer. Preference is not judgment. Judgment is invalidating everything you don't prefer. When you invalidate something, you become equal to it, and thus what you do not want, you become. Okay? And then that's really what's behind the phrase, judge not and you shall not be judged.
Right.
Okay? It means that essentially you become what you hate. So,
haven't you seen that happen to people and institutions? And isn't that an interesting paradox of
people
human
are culturally
dynamics?
conditioned to it. I mean, if you go into the educational system, which is another entire issue on a cultural level, you'll see all the little ego games and all the stuff that children are encouraged to play. And you know, it's no wonder that some people have a hard time in this kind of system, which is entirely an artificially and synthetically created disaster for trying to evolve in this system. And that's why, from another interesting and rather amusing aspect, is so desirable, because it puts out so much challenge.
Well, you seem to be suggesting that the quality of one's actions in a political or social arena, or any arena for that matter, is really determined by internal factors, and that would make it, would seem to me, impossible to judge the actions of anyone else, even a Stalin or a Hitler.
I think it's pretty tricky business. I think you can make judgments about actions, that you don't judge beings, you judge their actions. And actions are good or evil in the sense that actions increase paranoia and separateness, or they increase unity. So you can judge actions and you can be opposed. I can say, I don't agree with that action you're going to do, and in fact I'm going to stop you from doing the action. But as Kabir said, do what you do with another human being, but never put them out of your heart. That if I have to harden my heart in order to oppose you, I lost. We both lost. And that's part of the art of the inner and the outer dialogue.
And then Jung reminds us of the conflict and the difficulty. The shadow, he says, is a moral problem that challenges the whole ego personality. For no one can become conscious of the shadow without considerable moral effort. See, the shadow stands between you and yourself. It stands in the way of the soul. But shadow implies a shadow. Shadow, he means shadow literally. What is a shadow? To have a shadow, you must have something that's casting it. The shadow is not the shadow of your ego, because as we said, the ego is a social ego. So the shadow is really the shadow cast by your social persona, that collective mishmash hive that you've embodied. It's actually one of the least personal things about you, is what the shadow is. The shadow is everybody's shadow. And then, as we showed in the trailer, highly recommended works of the psychologist Thomas Szasz, The Myth of Mental Illness. I emphasize these people because I believe it's monumentally important when it comes to solutions. And what I'm going to say now, you should listen to like you've never listened to anything else in your life. Because it's very, very important for the people you know, for yourself, and for the people that you're going to meet every day, especially in the coming years. Because everybody's talking about breakdown, everybody's talking about losing the thread, everybody's talking about their depressions. What happens if those depressions, if those feelings of futility, anxiety, whatever, are the closest you or that person have ever been to true selfhood? But that part of the mind, conditioned by all this pestilence that we've been talking about, is making you think that it's not. What happens if your depression is your best friend and your greatest teacher? And we went into this in the 2012 talk in Los Angeles, mentioned it in brief. What happens if your tragedy, your pain, your anxiety, your angst is the closest you have ever come, or that person who's giving you those problems, that laundry list of how they can't handle it, can't keep the job, can't keep the marriage, as if that's all normal? They can't find the harmony and the normality in an abnormal, deeply sick world.
Do you know that the door to reality, the gate, is incredibly narrow? I don't want to become biblical with you here. I don't want to preach a sermon, but the way out of this maze is extremely narrow. It's very hard. We're talking very serious stuff here. And we have to turn around, right, and re-examine a lot of what we've been told, even by a lot of the psychologists and the doctors and the so-called experts. What happens if those dark voices that you think are so alien and so foreign and so ghastly are actually there because this is the first time in your life that you've actually even approached the shrine of your own selfhood, your own aloneness, your own stillness. But the chorus of all that other stuff and all the chorus of the experts has you completely thinking the opposite. And so it's big pharma now, and it's drugs, and it's futility, and it's even suicide. Or it's immersion in all the other falseness of the world, thinking that you're now returned to sanity. Now, Heidegger already said this about our consciousness, the inauthentic and the authentic man. Because the pain and the so-called tragedy that comes with authenticity has its own beauty. It's in the running away from all of these aspects of yourself. This is when the problems arise.
Well, you seem to be, if one carries your position to its logical extreme, it means being willing to look at the grossest, most hellish misery on the planet.
All of it.
And embrace it.
All of it. All of it. You look just directly at, you learn how to keep your heart open in hell. You see the horrible beauty of the universe. I remember once I was teaching down at Big Sur at Esalen, and they gave me a house to house sit, and it came with a cat, and the cat and I became buddies, and every day the cat would come in when I was meditating in the morning and bring in its morning breakfast, which was a lizard or something, which was usually still alive, and it would sit down between my legs to eat, to be with me. And I would be sitting there being with God, and I'd hear squeak, squeak, crunch, crunch, and I didn't know who to hate. I mean, I loved the cat, but suddenly the cat was a killer. And I loved the lizard because I identified with the, and I went through all the changes, and I saw it is the phenomena of nature. You've got to be able to look at it all and say, yes, I acknowledge it, without being so busy reacting to it that you don't, because you don't even understand why it is that way. I mean, my ability to see around the edge of the, as Rilke said, the billboard at the edge of town, being able to see just around the edge of the veil, and I can just see a teeny little bit, just like we all can, leads me to understand the game is much farther out than I thought it was. That suffering has, I mean, I can understand the term suffering as grace. I can't live it. I can live it at moments with little sufferings. But I can understand that there is a beautiful unfolding of awareness through suffering. That's what my work with the dying is about.
Yeah.
The next layer, I've spoken about this concept many times, the giveaway. It's when we choose to release that which is negative, when we choose to release that which holds us back and doesn't allow us our full expression. There are times that we give away things to others so they may heal. There are times that we give away knowledge and wisdom for free simply because we want to share that knowledge and wisdom. But attached to that knowledge and wisdom is the absolute inner hope that people will use their own personal discernment, their own personal layers of understanding the patterns of life, so they may co-create with it and expand the concept so it takes on the infinite instead of the finite that we're stuck in. Some of these concepts are hard for people to understand, but that's all right. We're at the very dawn of a new age, and it is us that are the consciousness explorers of peace that will help define that. So the future generations that come into this world and come into their empowerment, as well as the existing generations, have a framework to work from, have a concept or a theme to work on, have notes to work on. There are hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of incredible videos that reveal the layers and patterns of truth that are out there, from our hidden history to conspiracy to health, and yet it's not accepted because the propaganda is still so in charge. The propaganda machine are the mainstream news agencies, are the magazines, are the pornography and zealots who insist there is only one way through domination and control. We have to give those things away, have to give away the desire, the need, the urge to even listen to them, until finally they have no ratings, until they must divest into other sources to once again gain control over us. And that will be another giveaway and another giveaway. We simply must not accept the illusions that they keep offering us. We must accept the additional abilities that are being offered us in discernment, in understanding, as well as to awaken yourself. It is when we come into that personal power that awakening shows us all the tools of wisdom we have. The main tool in the toolbox is listening to others. And when others exert force of wisdom, of domination, or control, you can simply say, I do not accept it, and I give it back to you. I give it away to you because I do not need that energy. I have my own self-esteem. I have my own empowerment, and I do not accept a single concept as the only way to go forward. Because when we accept a single concept, we are being led down the primrose path to self-destruction once again. And when we lead ourselves away from that, there will be other leaders that are going vice versa, back and forth, until finally you come into your own empowerment and understand that you have spiritual allies, you have light being allies, as well as beings of the gray. You know? We haven't really talked about those that walk between light and dark, those that have accepted that for this time of change there must be a balance, and that balance is understanding even the forces of light that have been fighting the forces of so long need to take a vacation, because the more you fight evil, the closer you become to it, and that's just the nature of it, unfortunately. That's just the raw nature. The more you fight it, the more you're exposed to it. The more you're exposed to it, the more healing you need from it. The more healing you need from it, the more we need leaders to remind us to stay in power, to not trick ourselves, to not be in opposition, to not let ourselves fall into darkness, domination, control, simply because we have battled it for too long. One of those first ways is you tell your story. Quite literally tell your story to yourself, to that whole concept, so we all can come together. And once we understanding that coming together means tolerance, it means connection to the Earth Mother, to the vehicles of spirituality and religion that allow tolerance and do not allow domination. And once we come into that aspect, we'll be on a layer of knowledge, a layer of wisdom where so many people will just get it. The light bulb in their head will turn on. They'll pay attention to the patterns that have been going on and simply say, no, domination, control, you are done here. Your time is over. It is time for you to leave. It is time for you to go to the great ice worlds of the ages passing, to be forgotten. Just as we are erased with amnesia, soon we will have to forget about them and become to a layer of healing that we can all accept, that we can all move forward in. And that's the shaman's path, life, death, and rebirth, reborning ourselves out of the ashes to allow the future versions of ourselves to exist. So here we are. I keep saying that, here we are. Because each time I reveal a new layer, there's a new pattern, and a new pattern reveals a new layer. So it's an infinite source, an infinite concept, until finally we get to an understanding. It is us that must empower ourselves to empower others. It is us that looks for those that are acting in stealth, in deception. It is us that looks for those that have the passion and fire medicine within inside them to share with the all, and to not share with the few. When we share with the all can have an opportunity to be innocent once again, to recharge their inner child, and be a part of this world with the full creative force that's inside them.